Learning Ally is a proud sponsor of the Empowered Dyslexia podcast. Learning Ally, a nonprofit education organization, helps to transform the lives of struggling learners by delivering proven solutions that help students reach their potential. We have a heritage of supporting students with a reading deficit like dyslexia. Our award-winning human-read audiobook solution helps students in grades 3 through 12 access books they want and need to read to help them succeed. Visit www.learningally.org for more information.
The following content is not intended as a substitute for professional legal advice, medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your attorney, advocate, physician, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding any medical or educational concerns.
Hello and welcome to Empowered Dyslexia. I'm your host, Stephen Yearout, and we're here to help you become a better informed partner in education. On this show, we discuss dyslexia and other related disorders. We discuss research and special education policy at the state, federal, and local level. We discuss interventions on how to help our children with learning disabilities. We also interview experts in their fields, and my favorite part is we get to speak with people who have personal stories about how they dealt with their learning disabilities and how they have made it through it. Be sure to like us on Facebook and subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. If you like to watch our show live, you can watch it on either Facebook Live or YouTube Live, and then you can download our audio version wherever you get your audio, your podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher. One that's coming pretty soon, our channel is being built, is Pandora, so that's really exciting to get put on Pandora now. Today's topic is it's a continuation of how do we stop the pipeline to prison? And we really want to ask the question, how can the court system help stop the pipeline to prison also? I mean, because this is a it takes a village issue. I mean, everybody's playing a role in this, and our court systems also can play a role in stopping that pipeline to prison for our youth. Today's guest, she is a court supervisor, a judicial commission. She served on the Judicial Commission for Mental Health Collaborative Council. She is also on SPARC for Autism Community Advisory Committee, Collin County Mental Health Symposium Committee, Texas. She just graduated the Texas Partner in Policymaking Class 1920. She serves on the Community Disabilities Rights Advocate, a community leader to promote mental health, community inclusion, and network for systematic change. So I would like your help in welcoming, I can't speak today, welcoming Miss Hunter to the show. Thank you for being here. You're muted. Sorry about that.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's an honor to have you on the show, and you know the time that we spent talking for our pre-show, I was just amazed and you know the things that you're doing and getting out there, and you are doing the what can I do to make things better. You are doing those steps, and I mean you are inspiration for me to continue to do more and more. there's always more that we can do. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you. It seems like it always comes around to who's affected the most, huh? Like it takes you to have a person to see these areas, and definitely did for me.
So can you tell our guests, I mean, I gave a little bit of an introduction, but can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and, you know, why you have joined all of these committees and why you advocate for our children with learning disabilities?
Yeah, absolutely. As I was going through school, I also had learning disabilities. I wasn't able to read very well. My mom had me very active in 4-H, FFA. I held some state 4-H offices and FFA as well. That helped me as far as being outgoing and learning how to network, which was to my advantage, and I would see later in my life. I had to adapt different procedures as far as how I learned the best, and it went against what the teachers and, you know, the school would say. And so I'm like, So as I had kids, that's the same thing. I have 3 kids, and that's how we also got them through most of their school, is through adaptation, through their curriculum and all of that. So having that underneath my belt, I think, has given me an advantage.
Okay. So can you tell us a little bit about, well, to start with, let's talk about Spark for Autism. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so my sister-in-law works there. And then whenever my son finally got his diagnosis, she was talking about doing the swab. I will say that since I have been in all of these advocacy programs, I know there's controversy on do we need a treatment? Do we need to identify if there should be a cure, or should we accept them into our community? As you know, a disability is normal, basically. So what I went into the Spark for autism research with the aspect of, is this genetic? Like, I wanted to know. I have some other family members, some nephews that have been diagnosed with this being on the spectrum as well. And I went in to that. My capacity is to learn about this. I don't want to necessarily say, you know, we shouldn't have this. We don't know what research could do to help that. Could it be a certain type of therapy, or could it be like a toxic manifestation, because they are even saying environmental changes could affect it. So I'm just curious. I'm like really wanting to know knowledge, and so I'm trying to get in and see what's going on and how I can help in that area.
So, you know, you hit on a very important topic, was the 3 different thought process. 1, do we need a cure? 2, is it therapy? Or 3, do we just accept them? And I would say yes to all of them. If there is a cure, great. However, what we're looking for is the right remediation that is scientifically tested and proven to help in specific areas to allow that child to become the best version of themselves that they can be, and that they know that they can be, their parents know that they can be. I mean, that's what I push for dyslexia. Well, for any disability, we want to make sure that they're getting the best, most tested, most scientifically tested methodologies to help that child become successful.
Yes, so, I agree.
And then you just graduated the Texas Partners in Policymaking. What is that?
So the Texas Partners in Policymaking is an advanced course that you get selected to do. There was 33 that passed. I believe they had 230 don't quote me on that, applications. They put us through a really good training, and we get, people from all across the country. We get House representatives, talk with the legislative session, get to understand a bill, help us on how to propose a bill. And it has been phenomenal. The people that I've met in there are just like my family now. We text still, even though we've graduated. And now I've been welcomed into a bigger community of the alumni. And the alumni members are those that had past graduated that are still actively working for systematic change or whatever their passion is. Mine is for systematic change. But anyway, so I'm very excited. I've also just got selected to be in the Texas Disability Leadership. It's the first class ever. So it's about, myself and my capacity as far as my career goes, and then how I can help in make it more inclusive for those with disabilities. And so that's what I'm doing right now, and it's been phenomenal as well.
So that's a good segue into your role with the court system. You are a court supervisor. So what does that position do? And can you talk a little bit about the training that you provide for your courts and others?
Yes. So with being a mom and also being one that has disabilities, I have embraced my role. If I think everybody remembers the Sandra Bland Act, that was horrific and horrible and a huge tragedy. So
can you touch a little bit about what that was for some of the people that haven't heard of it?
Yes. So Sandra Bland was a lady that was pulled over. She was stopped by a Texas trooper. She got arrested and ultimately committed suicide in jail. So the legislation, the next session, came out with the Sandra Bland Act, which is requiring that jails do a mental health assessment while they magistrate. They have a timeline to do that, and then report it back to the court to try to give the court some sort of knowledge beforehand if that person does have a condition that they should be aware of. It also touched about, personal recognizance bonds. It talked about surety bonds. I mean, it's a really good piece of legislation.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the training that you provide, not only for your court system, but others.
So I do training on how to identify and recognize those with IDD, which means intellectual developmental disabilities, DD, which is developmental disabilities, and then also ID, which is intellectual disability. So I'll use those phrases throughout my conversation. I just wanted to make sure you knew what the acronyms are. So when people like that are coming in to court, I let the court staff know how to recognize them, also how to provide accommodations if that's what's needed. A lot of times people think of ADA as a physical impairment, not a cognitive impairment. So I'm trying to help shift that mindset. I mean, that's the training to think that way, because it's been conditioned, and to think about how can we assist these people that come in that might have a cognitive disability. So I do that. I'll touch on some areas for court staff as far as statutes go that we can do to help with these individuals that come in, the citizens. And then I will also talk about how can you help these people? How can your case management flow look like? So right now, the state of Texas does have a juvenile case manager. The juvenile case manager is adapted by the state statute. However, it could also be by the city ordinance. So with that person is supposed to spend most of their time helping with the juveniles. So I would like to propose, and I've been verbally advocating that we need a mental health supervisor, someone that helps for mental health IDD, because it's all worded written and verbally all one. So if you have a mental health or if you have an IDD or DD, it seems to be paired together. And, you know, a lot of times the mental health is a symptom from the IDD. So it's fitting, but I'm trying to help other court staff recognize it. I'm trying to help them see that, you know, we need change in that area.
Absolutely. So, you know, that is one of the key pieces that we have to have in, you know, stopping the pipeline to prison, is making sure that our court systems, our judges, our prosecutors, our defense attorneys, and of course the court staff, that they understand that some of these behaviors that in situations that may cause the citizens to show up, the students to show up, juveniles to show up, may necessarily not be something that they can control. Right. So, or, you know, that the children are going unidentified. Therefore, you know, that starts that snowball that we constantly talk about.
Absolutely.
That drives them in that pipeline.
So in also too, if you get, you know, like say for instance, a Class C misdemeanor, there is no guarantee that you would have any type of counsel. So it really opens the eyes up as far as, you know, what assessment tools are being used. There is no assessment tools. So how do we hold the accountability for, you know, making sure we're doing our due diligence in how we're handling these cases? It's very thought provocative, because right now I can tell you I work with so many great, fabulous people across the state of Texas, and it takes networking and collaborating. And all the training sessions have been very good as far as touching up on mental health and all of that. However, there needs, you know, again, for what I'm advocating for is the systematic change. You know, have mandated courses to take for defense attorneys, district attorneys, prosecutor attorneys, have some sort of understanding of how IDEA affects the criminal justice system. Now, when I say IDEA, I'm talking about the federal law IDEA. That is what is accounted for in school settings. So if there was an incident that happened into a school setting, they are covered most likely through that federal law. And then you'll have someone go to a state agency like a local PD and then file charges on them, which then makes it a state statute that they have allegedly broken without the knowledge, the courts, without knowledge of saying, oh, but they were protected by federal law. So that's also helping with this gap we're seeing as far as these juveniles going into the criminal justice system.
So with your training that you're providing for the court systems, what kind of responses are you getting from like prosecutors and judges that really had, because from what I know, they don't have to go through any type of PD or classes on mental health and mental health issues, learning disabilities. What kind of responses are you getting from those people that hold those titles after your training?
It's been very, very thankful. I do have some court staff members that still text me today as far as, you know, is there any services? Do you know of a local provider? What can I do to help? And I love those calls. I love those texts, and I'll send them what I have. But, you know, honestly, the thing is we have to make that mental operational shift in our head. So we're going to have to start thinking, what type of atmosphere is this? Is this going to be like a medical model of continuum care, or is this going to be a rehabilitation model? I think that since the medical model follows so closely to the criminal justice model. You get in, you say, okay, you're going to do this. You're going to be on a deferred period or whatever of 30 days, and you need 6 counseling sessions. And guess what? After that, you're done. You're good to go. And that's not, we're not seeing a lot of success. We're actually seeing them reoffend again. So if we could shift our focus and save money, the taxpayers' money, from throwing them into these situations and put more local based services in the community, that number one will help.
So
But you
I gotta, let me jump in real quick. So we got a question from one of our viewers, and you know, we've already seen the studies that have been done here in Texas on the prison system, and we see that over 50% of our Texas population and our incarcerated inmates have dyslexia, and over 80% are functioning illiterate. So, you know, what can we do as the dyslexia community to help be a part of these trainings so that our court staff, our court system understands fully what dyslexia is and how that learning disability and lack of education can drive our students into you know, the pipeline or being in their courtroom?
So I would, as far as, you know, how that the community can help, it is very, very, I mean, there is known data that shows that those in incarceration, most of them cannot read. And I can tell you from personal experience, a lot of behavior comes from that they cannot read. And they're expected, you know, they have this educational curriculum they have to do. They're expected to do it. And if no one catches that or gives them support, you can see behaviors like elopement, kicking of the desk, which is, by the way, destruction of school property, breaking a pencil, destruction of school property, which can hint to a restraint. I really feel like if we could get to that right here, the reading element, it will help with so many more tiers of how our youth are going into the criminal justice system so rapidly. So I would have to answer that question. I just wanted to say that. I would have to say that get involved, write your state legislative representatives, be vocal, go into your ARD meetings. If you feel like your kid has some sort of, reading disability, question everything. Don't be rude about it, but learn on your own. That's the biggest thing that I've always been able to do. Someone can tell me something and I'm sure that they believe it's correct, but I still want to research it and interpret it on my own views. So I would have to say that as well. You can, no one's the best advocate other than the parent.
That is a great point. I mean, you take in all the information. What's the saying? Trust but verify.
Yes.
So, I mean, I practice that constantly. If you tell me something, I'm going to believe you, and I'm going to walk away, and I'm going to go look it up, and we'll have another discussion if what I find is different than what you told me. So I agree that if we can combat this reading piece of it, it will change a lot of the other underlying issues that cause our children to end up in front of these judges. I mean, yes. Truancy is a big one.
Truancy is a huge one. And I would, there's a lot of aspects for parents on that as well. Under IDEA, it states, if your child, and I need to say this, I'm not an attorney, I'm not giving legal advice, but anybody can look this up and see it. So I'm stating it. under IDEA, if your school is not able to help your child or your child's not in a safe environment, that is an against truancy. And I've known several parents that have used that and argued, that are my friends, that their child has not been safe and they're not getting the accommodations that they need at school. So they stay home until the school can do it. But again, it takes a lot of researching. I would have to tell all the parents that are struggling in this aspect, if their child are having reading difficulties, and it starts out reading, which it always normally does, the data will reflect that. It then turns into behavioral around the end of fourth grade, some fourth, fifth, and then you'll start seeing truancy. The dropout rates will start going higher and higher for your kiddo. So,
well, because we see that their kindergarten, first, second is really geared on learning to read, and third grade on is reading to learn. And that's why we see that wall at third grade. And I think that's the reason why we always heard that you can't test for dyslexia until third grade, which is absolutely not true.
Yes, it's kind of the way I've heard it argued is the culpability of what the child may know. So how do you know if it's dyslexia, or how do you know if it's educational questionable aspect of they just haven't learned it yet? So that is something that's also being used.
So you've done a lot of research around discipline, around suspension and expulsion. Can we talk a little bit about this information that this research that you've done?
Yes. So the research is there. It's on the OCR website. There's also some on the T website. But it will reflect that children that have a IEP or BIP.
BIP is behavioral intervention management plan.
Mm-hmm. So if basically a BIP if your child is unable to abide by the school conduct code, students conduct code, then they should have a BIP. If they don't have a BIP, you need to ask for a BIP, because this is something to show, okay, well, my kid cannot, be quiet. He might chirp, or he might do some sort of masking that would break that particular violation in the student code of conduct. So we're going to have a BIP, and this BIP is going to protect him, and it's going to say, if he does this is what staff should do to see the behavior that they want. That's what a BIP is. However, if for any reason at all your child is, breaking the student code of conduct, you should have a manifestation determination review meeting. In that meeting, it should be the R committee and the parent, and you should decide whether or not that behavior was a manifestation of their disability.
Well,
that is kind of like a loophole.
Let me jump in there real quick, because a lot of times, especially in 504 plans, 504 committee, a parent doesn't necessarily have the right to be a part of that committee. However, it's best practices in the ARD, or under special education, IDEA law. The parent is part of that committee. So, when an ARD is called, I'm just telling this for our viewers and our listeners. When that ARD is called, you have the right to be there, and there is notice requirements and everything else that goes along with that. So make sure that you're aware of your involvement right under special education, especially for these type of meetings.
Yes, and a lot of districts do just go straight to the 504, and they won't even try to do an IEP. A lot of them will also know that there's other conditions that the child has, and still not saying anything about another health impairment to help them have access to the IEP. So I saw this thing on social media, and it's 100% true. It goes something like, IDEA is the only federal law in history that's parent enforceable. Like, you can only get IDEA once the parent gets up and says, hey, my child's guaranteed this. So that's just, it goes right here talking about that. The 504, if you have a manifestation disability, determination review meeting, you do not have any right whatsoever as a parent to even attend that meeting. It's best practice if you do, which means they can get in trouble for not inviting you. They can turn around and say, this is not a manifestation of this child's disability. And then whatever is under state law, that's what your child will get. So if it's with state law, if it says if your child commits A, B, C, then this is what you should do, schools, which is always a DAEP placement. And then if they break the school policies conduct, that could be something completely separate against the school as well. So it's very, very, very important that you make sure, if your child has a behavioral issue, I absolutely despise the term emotional disturbance. I don't like that word. That is a way for them to communicate. It's all behavior is a form of communication. This is me speaking as a mom. You need to figure out why that behavior is existing and then try to approach it from that area, not discipline the behavior. So anyway, get off my soapbox real quick. But if the parent doesn't take the safeguards, and a lot of time it's due through, where they might be located. They might be in a very small town and don't know any other parents and don't know any of your child's rights or your rights. That's going to flood them to the criminal justice system. What we're finding is since they put that amendment into the IDEA, that amendment was never, it wasn't there before, but that amendment now for the MDRs is there, and it's a loophole. And this is how they catch your kid, and they put them in the criminal justice system.
So does the court, I'm trying to think of how to ask this question. When a child is, brought in front of the judge, say for, like you were talking about, destruction of property or something like that, I mean, does the court have all of that information that this child has a learning disability, ID, intellectually delayed, or whatever the diagnosis is? I mean, do they get all of that information beforehand?
It depends. It depends on, I'm going to be honest. In my experience, it took some judges, they know a lot. And there is a judge in, what is it called? He was a special ed attorney, and he's now a judge. And let me tell you something, he does teachings, and he is phenomenal. I want to meet him one day, but he's fantastic. And he goes around, tells, these courts and judges and DA and prosecutors, you can do this, you can do this. Because, you have to remember, judges they're not exempt from any type of, ethical violation. So I think that, and this is me just speaking as a citizen of the society, I believe that there is a lot of unknown there. Like, can I ask for this? Or can I not ask for this? No one wants to overcross or overstep. So I think having more focus on this, in having more seminars and trainings and conferences for judges, prosecutors, defense attorneys, district attorneys, all of them. If they could all have some sort of mandated, you CLE credit. That CLE is the judicial hours attorneys have to have. Then we can move and get that awareness out there. Like, hey, I'm entitled to that. There's so many things that a judge can do, and I'm not sure that any of them really had the training on what they can do. So, or I shouldn't say have that training. They have knowledge of how to appropriately do it within their capacity as a judge,
right,
or a magistrate. So,
well,
I think
one of the things I think that we can do as citizens, most judges are elected. Most DAs are elected. These people who have an elected position in the court systems, we as citizens need to be requesting meetings with, these positions and having discussions with them about why it is important for them to go out and research and go out and get this type of training, to seek it, because they could be seeing one of our children in front of them. And we want to make sure that they are as well educated about why that manifestation or why that behavior put them in front of the judge or the DA. And that there's other things that we could do instead of putting them in the criminal system.
Yes. Also, a lot of people don't know that any child with some sort, or not even child, anyone with a cognitive disability or learning disability, or the data reflects that they are more not the victims than the aggressor. So if their behavior was in a self-defense manner, they can still get prosecuted for that, even knowing that, this behavior was self-defense. Adults can still be aggressors, and adults can still be aggressors at school. So I think that the immunity aspect of it should be reformed. I think that accountability with everybody should be made on the front forth of helping stop this, school to prison pipeline. There is no ethical accountability. There's no criminal accountability. There's not a civil accountability other than due process. So I do believe if we can look into that too and have some advocates, fellow advocates help with that systematic change as far as the full immunity, I think that will also hold the educators like, hey, we're watching you.
Well, there's story after story that you can find where young kids are getting handcuffed and put in the back of a police car and taken to the county or the city jail and booked, and they have some of these cognitive disabilities that we're talking about, and I'm not going to say they weren't getting the support that they need, but the fact that they're in the back of a car, police car, on the way to jail, I would always make that argument that they weren't getting the support that they needed. So, we need to make sure that we're getting all of these pieces, the school system, the SROs, the court systems, all of these people together. And like I was saying at the very beginning of the show, we're being that partner in education. All of us, it's taking the village to help our children, the ones that need it the most.
Yes.
You know, these are the ones who are begging for our help. These kids want to learn. They want to be successful.
Yes.
And they deserve it. They deserve the same education that an honor student gets or an AP student gets. They deserve that type of education. They deserve the ability to get out there and be a part of society like they want to be. They can do so much more. And we tend to not have high expectations for a lot of these kids. And it's maddening to me because I know the supports that we can put in place to help the children and the families to make sure that we are not putting these children on a road that ends them up in front of a judge.
Yeah. Very well said.
So I mean, I mean that's my soapbox.
It's my soapbox too. As we talked, before, the money's not being allocated accordingly for these types of services. You don't really have a whole lot of parent overlook. Like you have a lot of accommodating parents that really just don't know where anything's going because I didn't know either. So I was that parent once before as well. But how do you get in contact with all these parents in an ISD? How do you let them know, like, hey, should we be looking over here at this, and let's look at the budget over here and this? And I can tell you, a budget says a whole lot about how a school thinks about those with disabilities.
Well, I mean, we can look at the 8.5% cap that Texas had on special education. Yep. And then we can turn around and look at the amount of people that we know that are in prison that have dyslexia and the amount of people that can't read. And I mean, there's a direct correlation here. So,
yes, there is.
We have to shut off this pipeline. We have to allow our school systems to do what our school system's main job is to educate our kids, all kids. No matter if they're hard to teach or not, your job is to educate all kids, no matter their disability or ability. And, this is why we have this show, is to make sure that we can reach those parents that are in the small towns or don't know what their rights are or how they can navigate, special education, IDEA, or 504 policies to just try to get their kids some education. So, yes. I'm going to give you we're coming up on our time, but I'm going to give you the last 2 minutes here to talk and give us any more information about, the research that you're doing, anything that you want our listeners to know. And then I'll come back in and close the show up.
Yeah. So right now there is a book that's in the works for IDEA and juveniles, so like a judge's bench book. If you have not yet looked at the Judicial Commission on Mental Health of the State of Texas, their website, I encourage you to do that. They have great resources. The executive director is very passionate about what she does. So that's a lot for parents as well. Also, the CRG or CRCG, every county has one. You can look into that as far as resources for your kiddo. they're all advocates, and it's just for your kid, not for the school or anyone else. So I invite all of y'all to take a look at your kids' IEP, or look at your district's budgets, and make wise and well-informed decisions for your child. I choose not to pull my kids out of public schools because my kid has that right, just like everyone else. I will not allow my kids to be homeschooled and miss that community inclusion, because the way it used to be and the way the history's always seems to reflect is, state institution hospitals, no community services, and my child deserves to be included in the community. So I advocate a lot for more services. They need to contribute to society, have meaningful careers. So we just have to focus the operational shift on the medical side of, the atmosphere being more favorable for a cultural inclusive model in a climate.
Well, thank you again for coming on the show. And, I would like to publicly invite you to be on our Pipeline to Prison task force. That your position, and, you have that piece of it, which is the court system. I think that you bring a lot to the table, and the amount of advocacy work and training that you do, I think that you bring an invaluable piece to destroying this pipeline to prison.
I would love to. Yes. Thank you.
So thank you again for all that you do. Thank you for coming on our show today. I want to make sure that we, again, I ask you to like us on Facebook, like us and subscribe to us on YouTube. Leave us a comment. We love to hear from our viewers. At the end of every show, we always like to recommend that if your child is struggling in school and nobody really understands why they're struggling, don't waste any more time. Get them tested for learning disabilities under special education. The process should be very easy and painless. We have a template on our website, www.empowerdyslexia.info. You can download the template, put your information in it, turn it into your school counselor, and that starts the clock to get your child tested under special education. You will be relieved, and the stress will be gone when you understand exactly what's going on with your child. Your child will be too, because now we can provide the appropriate services for your child to make sure that they can participate in education like they want to. I want to say thank you for all the support each and every week that our viewers and listeners give us. Thank you for being with us. And this is, like I've said before, Empower Dyslexia is all of our show. This is about us. This is about community. This is about how do we make sure that our kids get the services that they need. So until next time, we'll see you. And here's a word from our sponsors.
Learning Ally is a proud sponsor of the Empowered Dyslexia podcast. At Learning Ally, we are always looking for new ways to engage readers struggling with a reading deficit like dyslexia and help them work to their potential. Visit www.learningally.org to learn about the Learning Ally audiobook solution, including which of your students are eligible for access. If you live in Texas, we have great news. The Texas Education Agency provides access to the Learning Ally audiobook solution for all K-12 public and charter school students with reading deficits. Get started today by visiting www.learningally.org/Texas.